I was listening to a podcast yesterday and they quoted Sonia Renee Taylor. She wrote The Body is Not an Apology. And she said, as they were quoting her, every time I hear that critical, judgmental voice in my head, I remind myself that is the voice of the system. And I love that. I thought of that when you were saying that, like that judgmental, critical voice in your head saying, hey, it's been 4 years, you need to get back at this. Like, that's not your voice. That is that hard things happen to make you grow, get back, work, produce, forward motion only. That is the voice of the system. And I really liked that. I hadn't heard that quote of hers before, because I think somehow that takes it out of like, oh, my inner voice is so crabby and so cranky, and why can't I be nicer to myself? And it's like, that's actually not your voice. That is the internalized voice. As we talk about like internalized misogyny when women hate on other women, or you know what I mean? Like that internalized voice, and that internalized voice of the system, as Sonia Renee Taylor said, is that critical. Why aren't you better? Why aren't you more? And that is not the true self voice, right? Which is, man, this sucks and this hurts, and it will take the shape that it takes, and I will tend to myself as best I can. We only demonize things that are powerful and terrifying, right? We could take that in so many directions. We only demonize things that really, really scare us. Yeah. Misogyny and racism and all of these other things, but that's a whole other subject. We have built up so many anti-grief, anti-pain narratives. Like, we have literally built entire empires to avoid pain, which tells us that like the feeling is so intense, and we haven't had throughout millennia, haven't had the systems to withstand that in ourselves and with each other, that we have done everything we can to demonize it, eradicate it, pretend it doesn't hurt, all of these things. We only do that with things that we feel are more powerful than us. We opened up our conversation here today talking about how impossible love is and the things that love demands of us, right? How many times have you heard somebody say, I don't want to stop crying because I'll never be able to stop? It is better to stop it before it starts than to let those feelings consume me. The thing is that avoiding it doesn't make it go away. It makes it harder. And it is in turning towards it and turning towards each other and feeling it in connection with each other, holding ourselves, having the containers and the support, which is very different than being rushed out of it. I can't remember what page it is, and it's okay, but it's in that first part of the book where I'm talking about like leaning into this stuff, telling the truth about it, supporting ourselves, supporting each other, like listening to the pain of the world. Like, it's not going to be a world without grief, but it is a world with so much more connection and so much more depth and so much more meaning, and honestly, so much more safety, because all of these things that we've done to pretend that grief doesn't exist, or it's not that bad, or that if you're still feeling it, you're the one fucking it up. Like, that is making an unstable world because it's a lie, right? So your question was, why do we keep doing this? Well, we've been doing this for millennia, and haven't we hit a tipping point yet? Well, yes. And every generation rams the gates of what is acceptable and paves the way for what is to come. Sometimes when I talk about the outdated stages of grief model, people think that I'm ragging on Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. No, that woman was amazing. She rammed the gates of what was acceptable in the late 60s, early 70s. The fact that she was a medical professional talking about, hey, people have feelings when they get terminal diagnoses. That was revolutionary for the time, in this like buttoned up, do not talk about emotions, mind only, body, like all of this stuff. Like, that was revolutionary. And the entire reason that I get to talk about grief in the ways that I get to talk about grief are because of those earlier revolutionaries. She got to talk about grief and being human and all of those things because of the people who came before her. Yeah. Have we hit a tipping point? Yes, over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And it means continuing to push those boundaries and continuing to vote for humanity and respect and the conditions that we live in where love demands impossible things from us. And how do we survive that? How do we support ourselves and support each other? How do we allow ourselves to have the feelings that we have? Yeah. I mean, I can really go off on a bender on this one. There's a talk that I give a lot these days around, pain runs downhill, the things that we have done to each other, the things that we continue to do to this planet, right? Because we're in pain. Pain runs downhill. You can say that grief is over in a year if you want to, but it's going to keep talking. So pain runs downhill, and so does love. So does kindness. So does support and inclusion and respect and autonomy. Yeah. So have we reached a tipping point? Yes, every day. Every day. And the fact that there are more of us talking about this openly, there is still a long way to go. And we have come so far. Just in the 15 years since I got thrown into the world of sudden death, and how the hell has it been 15 years? But like, this world has changed in the last 15 years, in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, in the last 2.